Hi, my name is Matt Farina, and welcome to Opening the Desktop to Kubernetes. Today, I'd like to introduce you to a new project from SUSE called Rancher Desktop. Rancher Desktop isn't Rancher, the Kubernetes cluster manager, running locally on your desktop. Instead, it's a whole new project. Rancher Desktop brings Kubernetes and container management to your computer as a desktop application. Here you can see the preferences screen for Rancher Desktop running on Mac. You can see the Kubernetes version, the memory being used, the CPUs being used, and some supporting utilities that are linked into your path. And these are just some of the example settings that you'll get in here. But this is just to illustrate that this is Kubernetes running locally as a GUI desktop application. Now, Rancher Desktop is designed to run on Mac OS and Windows. Mac and Windows are the two environments that application developers and application operators are most likely going to be using for their day-to-day activities. And so we're bringing Kubernetes and container management to you in their normal local development environments. These are environments where people expect and regularly interact with GUI applications, and that's what Rancher Desktop provides. Now, Rancher Desktop provides more than just Kubernetes. Inside of it, you're going to have KIM. KIM is the Kubernetes Image Manager. It's a project that lets you build, push, and pull container images. And I'll demonstrate that and how it works with Kubernetes in just a few minutes. kubectl is the Kubernetes command line utility that's commonly used to interact with a Kubernetes cluster. And Helm is the Kubernetes package manager. When Rancher Desktop interacts with Mac, it creates a Linux virtual machine using the hypervisor framework. And inside of there, it'll spin up Containerd and the K3s distribution of Kubernetes. On Windows, it does things a little bit differently. It uses the Windows subsystem for Linux. And it does this so it'll work everywhere from Windows Home through Windows Professional. Inside of Windows Subsystem for Linux, it spins up a new distribution that's separate from any other distributions you may already have or may want to have in Windows Subsystem for Linux, so that way it doesn't dirty up those environments. In there, it spins up Containerd and the K3s distribution of Kubernetes. Rancher Desktop is completely open source. It's up on GitHub, and it's available under the Apache 2 license. You can file issues, you can create pull requests if you want to contribute to its development, or if you want to see what's going on or how the source is, it's all open and available for you. Rancher Desktop's built on proven technology, Kubernetes, Containerd, Helm. We've talked about some of these, but they've been used in production apps all over the world and have already proven themselves. Rancher Desktop just brings these together with an experience designed to make them easy to use on a local desktop environment. Now, with all that being said, Rancher Desktop's first alpha was on May 3rd of this year. And so we welcome feedback, we welcome feature requests and other activities around that, because this is a new project that's just come out and it's just started. So please be patient with us. And if you find issues, file the issue, let us know. We'll try to be quick to respond. Now, with all that in mind, let's go take a demo and see what we already have today. Here's the desktop on a Mac, and you can see a desktop application or icon for Rancher Desktop. Now, this on a Mac is normally in the applications directory alongside all of your other applications. I've brought it here just to make it easy to see on the desktop that it's just a fully bundled application. Now, I've already started it, and you can see the Rancher Desktop logo sitting in the menu bar at the top. If this were on Windows, it would be in the taskbar, usually down at the bottom where your other icons are, but otherwise it would be the same style experience. When you open it up, you can see your status of Kubernetes. You can see here Kubernetes is running. If it were stopped or stopping or starting, you'd get that status here as well. You can also see your kube contexts, and this ties into the kube contexts you have globally on your system. And you can see them, you can switch between them, and you can see right now that Rancher Desktop is the one that's selected because I just started it. Now, let's look at the preferences. When you come into the preferences, on the general screen, which will be filled out with more stuff in the future, you can see links to the home page and issues, where you can come interact with the team in Slack, and just the project status. Now, if we drill into the Kubernetes settings, you can see that it's set to Kubernetes 1.19. And the reason for that is that's the latest version that's most commonly available across the public clouds. If you want to change versions to a different version, such as what you're using in production, you can choose the dropdown and select the version you want. and Rancher Desktop will go pull down the needed container images and environment and set that up for you locally. Now, if you're on a version and you downgrade to a lower version, it is going to wipe it out because Kubernetes does not downgrade gracefully. So anything you have running in the cluster will be wiped out. But if you go to a newer version, we will upgrade your environment and your workloads will carry along. So if I was on 119.10 and I upgraded to 120.6, it would take down the environment with my workloads, then bring it back up in the newer version of Kubernetes, and my workloads are there. That makes it really easy to test your applications and what happens when you upgrade Kubernetes, which is a common situation. You'll see here that the supporting utilities, these are the applications that I talked about before, they're linked into the path. And if you uncheck one of these, it'll disappear from the path or it'll come in. And if you already have something in your path in those locations, such as you installed it from somewhere else, it won't be available to be checked because we're not going to overwrite what you already have. There's things like port forwarding for services, images. We'll dig into that in a minute as we dig into the command line. So let me close out of here and let's take a look at what it's like to interact with at the command line. One of the simple things you can see, and I already showed you, is that it is tied into your kube context. Kube context is an application that I have installed that tells me what I have available and what's there. And the highlighted one is the active one. So here, let's just test installing something. Helm install WordPress, because that's a common thing that's installed to demo. And we'll go ahead and install it. And Helm is going to pull down the chart, which is the package, and install it into the cluster. And you can see it's up and running locally, and you have a way to interact with it in your cluster. And if we do Helm ls, which is lists what's installed, you can see that WordPress is installed. It installed the package. It's now running locally in Kubernetes on this desktop computer. You'll see that I have another application though running called Demo. And this is just a demo app called Anvil. And Anvil is an app that is just really for demo purposes. And what we can do here is we can see we have this demo app available. You can see we've got an application written in Go. We have a Docker file to containerize it. And it's an application. So let's build a new version of this. The first thing we can do is we're going to go ahead and do a new build of this for Linux because it's running in Linux even though this is a Mac in the virtual machine. So I'll build a new version of the application. Now I'm going to bundle it in as a container image. So we will use KIM, the Kubernetes Image Manager, to build it. And previously I built one called Alpha 1. Now I'm going to create a new version of it called Alpha 2. And so this should be a similar syntax for those of you who've used Docker as a command line. KIM build, and we're going to tag it with a specific tag and use the local directory. And here it will use the Docker file to build it. Now this is a scratch container, so it doesn't have any parent, but it works with those environments. And so it pulled it, it built the image, and it made it available. Now that image is available right inside of containerd now. So that Kubernetes environment, without pushing or pulling anything, now has that container image available. So if I go to that demo application here and I edit the version of the image that will be used by it, and I upgrade that environment to the new version of it, and I'm using Helm and a Helm chart and just modifying it for those images, it'll go ahead and it'll upgrade what's running in the cluster, and it'll switch from the older image to the newer image. It didn't need to pull it or push it. It's just available right there. This makes it very easy to do local development because you don't need an outside container registry every time you do an update and you want to test something. It's available right in that environment immediately, right after you've done a build. So that's a nice handy thing. And you can see the images that you have. Now, KIM, which is the application, the Kubernetes Image Manager, has a similar syntax for you. You can push, you can pull, you can remove, you can tag images. You can do all of those things here with registries and repositories. And this is really built on top of BuildKit, which is one of those tools that goes along with containerd that the other tools are just so often built upon. But this is designed to give you a familiar environment. And it does most of the work inside of that Kubernetes cluster using builders. So everything's just available in that virtual machine, in that environment, in that Kubernetes. So instead of an environment that puts containers first and adds Kubernetes on, this goes Kubernetes first and lets you interact with the images in that environment. And so that's just a quick demo of working with Rancher Desktop and what's included. If you want to learn more about it, you can visit rancherdesktop.io. You can get to the documentation, you can get to GitHub, you can download and install it for yourself. You can give us feedback, you can connect with us, and you can learn more about it. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy Rancher Desktop.